Hello seekers of shadowed histories, and welcome once more to Grim Histories for Sleep. Tonight we hoist anchor and set our course for the turbulent waters of the Viking Age, a time of bold exploration, brutal warfare, and beliefs steeped in the primordial power of nature. We journey with those who dared to cross the vast, grey and often merciless expanse of the North Sea in open longships, facing not only the fury of storms, but also the terrors that legend whispered lurked in the sunless depths. Our voyage takes us to the 9th or 10th century. Tonight, we don't just sail the cold grey waves of the North Sea with Viking explorers. We plunge into the abyssal dread of their oldest, darkest legends. Tales born from the deepest fears of seafarers who knew the ocean not as a resource to be managed, but as a vast, sentient entity, home to wonders and to horrors unimaginable. We explore what happens when the sea itself seems to turn against you, when ancient forebodings manifest under a blood-red moon, and when a creature of nightmare, the KRAKEN, rises from the depths to claim its due. So, the question we put to you, as you settle into the creaking timbers of our spectral longship, is this: could you survive, enduring not only the brutal storms, the back-breaking labor and the gnawing hunger of a Viking voyage, but also the sanity-shattering reality of the KRAKEN, a colossus of legend, rising from the abyssal depths on a blood-soaked night when the old gods seemed to turn their faces away, and the very sea held its breath in anticipation of terror? If these journeys into the chilling embrace of the past offer you a unique form of solace, do consider liking this video and subscribing to Grim Histories for Sleep. Your presence in our crew of nocturnal historians is always valued, and as the sea whispers its secrets, share in the comments where you are listening from tonight and what hour the moon governs in your part of the world. It connects us across the vast oceans of time and space. Now prepare yourselves. Let the modern world with its charts and satellites drift away like smoke on the wind. The salt spray on your face, the rhythmic creak of timbers, the bite of the northern wind, and a primal fear emerging from the deep await you. Your Viking ordeal is about to commence. The year is 965 AD. The bite of the late autumn wind is relentless, even for a seasoned Norseman. You are Thorolf, a mariner aboard the longship Hofupnir, the hoof-tosser, though many now call her the sea serpent for her sleek lines and the fearsome dragon head carved into her prow. You are days out from the familiar, comforting fjords of your Norwegian homeland, part of a crew of 40 souls, bound west across the vast, unforgiving grey canvas of the North Sea, seeking new lands, new trade, or perhaps new plunder. This voyage, however, already feels different, cloaked in an unnerving stillness. The air is preternaturally still tonight. The usually boisterous sea, a sheet of polished black obsidian beneath a grotesque blood-red moon hanging low and swollen in the starless sky. An eerie, unnatural calm has descended, after a day of strange, confused waves that seem to pull the ship in multiple directions at once. Old Steiger, the ship's skald, a man whose eyes seem to hold the wisdom and sorrows of 100 winters, has been muttering his grim forebodings for hours, his gaze fixed on that crimson orb as it paints the black water with its unholy, sanguine light. He speaks of ancient pacts broken, of a slumbering dread awakened in the deepest trenches where the sun has never shone. Your first challenge on this night is not the expected howl of a storm or the crash of waves over the bow. It is this profound, unnatural quiet, this palpable sense of the world holding its breath, and the growing icy dread that Steiger's whispered prophecies of a monstrous entity, a terror of the deep forgotten by most, are about to slither from the realm of fireside. Tales into your horrifying reality. The blood moon watches and the sea waits. Life aboard the sea serpent is a world unto itself, a microcosm of Viking society condensed into 60 feet of oak and iron. By day, It's a realm of disciplined effort and rough camaraderie. You and your shipmates, a mix of grim-faced veterans, scarred from 100 raids and eager youth seeking their first taste of adventure and silver, share the cramped space, the meager rations, and the relentless toil. There are no private cabins here, no quiet retreats. You sleep huddled together under the open sky, or beneath a stretched length of sailcloth if the weather turns foul. Your cloak's your only shield against the biting North Sea wind. Your bed is a hard wooden chest containing your few possessions, a spare tunic, a whetstone, perhaps a small carved idol of Thor or Freya for protection. The air is thick with the smell of brine, tarred wood, unwashed bodies, and the preserved fish and dried meat that form the bulk of your diet. Contrast. This with a modern vessel, a marvel of engineering, equipped with radar, GPS, and cabins that offer a measure of comfort and privacy. Your longship is a testament to Viking ingenuity and courage, but it is a fragile shell against the true immensity and potential fury of the ocean. Navigation is an art, a blend of keen observation and ancestral knowledge. Jarl Bjorn, your captain, a man built like an aging bear, with a voice that can outroar a storm, guides the sea serpent by the position of the sun, the stars, the flight of seabirds, the color and swell of the water itself. There are no charts as you would know them, only the mental maps passed down through generations of seafarers. Every voyage into the unknown is an act of profound faith and considerable risk, but tonight all the usual rhythms of the ship are suspended, muted by the grotesque spectacle painting the sky. The blood moon. It's not just a celestial phenomenon to you and your shipmates, it's an omen, a portent of cosmic imbalance, of dark powers stirring. The old tales, usually recited by Steiger around a crackling fire back in the Great Hall, speak of such moons heralding great battles, the deaths of kings or the awakening of ancient things, best left undisturbed. And Steiger, his face illuminated by the ghastly crimson light, does nothing to dispel these fears. He sits hunched near the mast, his gnarled fingers tracing unseen patterns on a worn wooden rune staff. His voice a low, chilling chant that seems to weave itself into the unnatural silence of the sea. He speaks of Ran, the cruel goddess of the sea, whose nets are ever ready to drag drowned men to her cold halls, and of Aegir, her consort, the brewer of storms. He hints at older, darker entities, primordial beings who dwelled in the abyssal depths long before the Aesir and Vanir, the gods you know, rose to power. You try to busy yourself, checking the lashings on the spare oars, recoiling a length of rope, anything to avoid looking too long at that baleful moon or listening too closely to Steiger's unnerving words. But the crimson light seeps everywhere, casting the familiar shapes of the ship, the dragon prow, the shields mounted along, the gunwales, the sleeping forms of your comrades, into monstrous alien forms. The usual rough banter, the boasting, the shared jokes that normally fill the quieter hours, are absent tonight. Men speak in hushed tones, if they speak at all. Eyes dart nervously towards the blood-reddened water, towards Steiger, towards Jarl, Bjorn, who stands stoic at the steering oar, his gaze sweeping the horizon, his expression unreadable. You feel a profound sense of exposure, of vulnerability. On this flat, unnervingly calm sea, the sea serpent seems like a tiny, insignificant offering laid out for some unseen, malevolent god. The vastness of the ocean, usually a challenging but familiar environment, now feels alien, pregnant with an unknown threat. The rhythmic creak of the ship's timbers, normally a comforting sound, now seems like the groans of a creature in distress. The cold, damp air, despite the lack of wind, seeps into your bones, a chill that has little to do with the temperature. Even the familiar scent of salt water is different tonight, sharper, with an underlying metallic tang like old blood. Steiger's voice rises slightly, and you catch a fragment of an old lay, one rarely spoken. Under crimson eye, the deep uncoils, a hunger ancient from lightless soils. When waves lie still and winds all cease, beware the silence, beware the peace. For Hafgufa stirs, and Lingbaka waits, and the great KRAKEN seals all fates. A shiver traces its way down your spine. Hafgufa, the sea steed, a monstrous fish or whale said to be so vast its gaping maw could be mistaken for a sound between islands, its breath a fog that lured ships to their doom. Lingbaka, the heather-backed, an island-sized whale that would allow sailors to land upon its back before submerging to drown them. And the KRAKEN, the most terrifying of them all, a creature of countless grasping arms, capable of pulling entire ships into the abyss. These are the fireside horrors, the stuff of nightmares, not things to be encountered under a real bleeding moon on a real silent sea. Suddenly a deep resonant tremor runs through the hull of the sea serpent. It's not the familiar shudder of a wave striking the bow, nor the scrape of a hidden rock. It's a vibration that seems to come from directly beneath you, from the lightless depths. Men cry out in alarm, stumbling as the deck shivers. Jarl Bjorn barks a question, but no one has an answer. The sea remains flat, calm, a sheet of blood-stained glass. The tremor fades, leaving behind an even deeper, more fearful silence. You exchange wide-eyed, terrified glances with your closest shipmates, Leif and Gunnar. The blood moon gazes down, impassive, and you feel with a chilling certainty that its vigil and Stiga's prophecies are only just beginning to bear their terrible fruit. The single powerful tremor that shook the sea serpent from keel to dragonhead has shattered the last vestiges of nervous calm among the crew. Fear, raw and undisguised, now flickers in every eye. Men clutch at their weapons, axes and sea-axes, suddenly seeming pitifully inadequate against an unseen, unknown threat. Jarl Bjorn roars for quiet, for discipline, his voice a lifeline of authority in the encroaching chaos of dread. But even his legendary composure seems strained. He orders men to check the hull for damage, to sound the depths with a weighted line. But these are the actions of a man confronting a knowable enemy. What lurks beneath them tonight feels anything but. In your Viking worldview, the sea is not merely water. It is a living entity, often hostile, the domain of powerful, capricious beings. Ran, the sea goddess, is a terrifying figure, dragging sailors to her gloomy underwater hall with her great net. Her husband Aegir is the personification of the ocean's might, a giant who brews storms. To sail is to intrude upon their realm, and offerings were often made to appease them. A captive sacrificed, a share of plunder cast into the waves, or at the very least, precious ale poured out as a libation. Steiger had performed the usual rites before you left the fjords, but under this blood moon it feels as if no offering would be enough, as if a far older, more insatiable power is stirring. Your modern understanding might look to seismic activity, to underwater geography, to explain the tremor, but for you, Thorolf, and your shipmates, the explanation is far more direct and terrifying. Something has awakened. Something has taken notice. Following the tremor, new and disturbing phenomena begin to manifest. Strange, oily patches, iridescent and unnatural, appear on the surface of the black water, shimmering with a sickly luminescence in the blood moon's ghastly light. They are vast, some stretching for hundreds of feet, as if something colossal has bled or secreted its essence into the sea. With them comes a rank, briny odor, thick and cloying, utterly unlike the clean, sharp scent of the North Sea. It's a smell of ancient decay, of things long dead and now disturbed, with an undertone of something alien and ammoniac. You retch, covering your nose with a corner of your woolen cloak, but the stench is pervasive, inescapable. Then come the sounds, faint at first, then growing in intensity, as if the ocean itself is groaning. Some of the men, their faces pale and slick with sweat despite the chill, claim to hear sonorous, mournful calls emanating from beneath the waves. Not the familiar clicks and songs of whales, but something far deeper, more resonant, calls that vibrate in your chest and seem to tug at the edges of your sanity. Stiga, his eyes now wide and alight with a terrifying understanding, grips his rune staff until his knuckles are white. "It is the Songana from Jupet," he rasps, his voice barely a whisper yet, carrying to every corner of the hushed ship. "The songs of the deep ones. They sing to the moon, they sing of hunger, they sing to us." You try to rationalize, to cling to some semblance of normalcy. Perhaps the sounds are merely the grinding of unseen ice, or the cries of distant, unknown sea creatures. Perhaps the oily slicks are from some natural underwater vent. But the oppressive atmosphere, the unwavering gaze of the blood moon and Stiga's chilling certainty, strip away your attempts at logical explanation. The fear is a living thing now, coiling in your gut, making your heart hammer against your ribs. You recall with a vividness that sickens you the half-forgotten tales your grandmother used to tell on stormy nights, tales of sea trolls, of the Midgard serpent Jörmungandr, whose coils were said to encircle the world, and of the KRAKEN, whose sleep was deeper than the sea and whose waking meant doom. Stories you dismissed as a child now surge back with the force of undeniable truth. Jarl Bjorn orders the men to the oars, his voice harsh. "Row," he commands. "Row as if Hela herself is at your heels. We put distance between ourselves and whatever cursed spot this is." The Vikings, seasoned warriors though they are, respond with frantic energy. Their fear a powerful goad. The great oars dip and pull, the sea serpent beginning to surge through the unnatural calm, leaving the oily slicks behind. But the rank smell lingers, and the eerie subaquatic calls seem to follow to mock your efforts. You pull on your oar, your muscles straining, your breath rasping in your throat. The effort is a small relief, an action to take against the encroaching dread. But as you row, you can't help but glance over your shoulder, back at the crimson-stained water, half expecting to see some monstrous shape break the surface. They see. Faces of your shipmates are grim masks of terror and exertion. Leif, rowing beside you, mutters a desperate prayer to Odin for deliverance. Gunnar, on your other side, his usual boisterousness extinguished, simply stares ahead, his jaw tight, his eyes reflecting the bloody moonlight like those of a cornered wolf. Suddenly, from the high dragon prow, a piercing scream cuts through the rhythmic splash of the oars and the desperate grunts of the crew. It's young Olaf, one of the lookouts, his voice cracking with pure terror. He stumbles back from the rail, his arm outstretched, his finger pointing with a palsied tremor at a spot far off the starboard bow. "There!" he shrieks. "By the gods, and what is that?" Every oar stills, every head snaps towards where he points, and there, slowly, silently, a colossal dark shape is breaching the surface of the blood-red water. It is too vast, too irregular to be any known whale. It is too large, too solid, to be a figment of collective fear. It rises and rises, like a black, moving mountain, emerging from the abyssal depths, blotting out the stars, a silhouette of impossible scale against the terrible beauty of the blood moon. It is not yet the Kraken you have been dreading, but something equally unknown, equally monstrous, and it is heading your way. The object that young Olaf's terrified scream drew your attention to continues its ponderous ascent from the wine-dark depths. It is colossal, beyond any frame of reference you possess. Your world, the world of the 9th and 10th century Norsemen, is one where nature is powerful and often dangerous, but its creatures, for the most part, are of a known scale. You've seen the great whales breach, majestic and awe-inspiring, but this is something else entirely. This is not an animal. It is a geological feature given monstrous life, a moving mountain range carved from the blackest, most ancient rock of the abyss. In your modern understanding, such a sight might trigger thoughts of undiscovered colossal squid, of deep-sea gigantism, or perhaps some elaborate illusion. But for you, Thorolf, and your shipmates, the world is still deeply enchanted, imbued with mythic possibilities. The line between the natural and the supernatural is porous, almost non-existent when confronted with such an anomaly. The tales of Lingbacker, the heather-backed island whale, or Hafgufa, the sea steam, whose form was so vast it was often mistaken for an archipelago, or whose gaping maw formed treacherous straits, surged to the forefront of every terrified mind. These were not mere stories, you now realize with dawning horror. They were warnings. The surface of this immense moving mass is not smooth like a whale's back. It is rugged, craggy, glistening with black, oily water under the blood moon's glare. Patches of what look like ancient, gnarled seaweed, thick as a man's arm, cling to its hide, and strange phosphorescent fungi or barnacle-like growths pulse with a sickly inner light. It emits a low, groaning sound, like the earth itself sighing in its sleep, and the air around it grows perceptibly colder, heavy with the same rank, ancient brine that you smelled earlier. There is no discernible head, no visible eyes or limbs yet, just this ever-rising expanse of living, moving terrain that seems to stretch for an impossible distance across the water. Jarl Bjorn, his face a mask of grim disbelief, bellows orders. Hard to starboard. All hands row for your lives. Steer away from that thing. His voice, usually a force of nature itself, now holds a tremor of something akin to fear, something none of you have ever heard before. The crew responds with the desperate strength of men facing annihilation. Oars dig deep, water churns, and the sea serpent, nimble as she is, strains to turn away from the approaching behemoth. But the creature, if creature it is not just large. It is creating its own currents, its own tide. You feel the ship being inexorably drawn towards it, as if by an unseen, irresistible force. The effort of rowing is immense, your muscles burning, your lungs screaming for air. But the psychological terror is far worse. You are a Viking, a warrior, trained to face human foes in the shield wall, to meet an enemy's gaze without flinching. But how do you fight the ocean itself, or a living island that defies all comprehension? Your axe, your shield, your courage, they are all meaningless against such a foe. You see the fear on the faces around you. Young Finn, barely old enough to grow a beard, is openly weeping, his oar strokes erratic. Even Kalf, the skull splitter, a berserker whose ferocity in battle is legendary, has a look of stark, primal terror in his eyes, his usual battle cry frozen in his throat. The island continues to rise, and now you can see that its edges are not solid, but seem to undulate, to shift, as if composed of countless smaller, roiling parts. The groaning sound intensifies, resonating through the hull of your ship, through your very bones. The phosphorescent patches pulse faster, casting an eerie underwater glow that illuminates the churning water between you and the colossal form. The smell is overwhelming now, a miasma of ancient rot, deep-sea brine, and something else, something indescribably alien. Then, as quickly as it surfaced, the main body of the creature begins to submerge. But this is no gentle descent. It sinks with a terrifying speed, creating a vast swirling vortex, a whirlpool that sucks the surrounding water and your longship towards its center with terrifying force. The sea serpent is caught, spinning. Like a toy boat in a maelstrom, oars are ripped from hands or snap with sharp cracks. Men are thrown from their benches, scrambling for purchase on the slick, bucking deck. Jarl Bjorn roars orders, but they are lost in the thunderous roar of the water and the panicked cries of the crew. You cling to the gunwale, the icy spray lashing your face, the world a dizzying whirl of black water and crimson moonlight. The ship is being drawn down into the maw of the whirlpool. You see, revealed by the receding water at the edges of the vortex, a series of jagged, uncharted rocks, black and needle-sharp, that were hidden just moments before. It seems you are to be crushed against them, a final, brutal end. The despair is a cold, hard knot in your chest. This is it. This is how your saga ends, not in glorious battle, but as a footnote in the legend of some nameless, faceless horror of the deep. But then, just as the rocks loom impossibly close, just as the crushing embrace of the whirlpool seems final, an even greater, more focused horror erupts from the churning chaos directly beside your beleaguered ship. This is no ambiguous island mass. This is a limb. Out of the tumultuous, blood-streaked water, not 20 paces from where you cling desperately to the wildly bucking sea serpent, a colossal pillar of flesh erupts. It is a tentacle, thicker than your ship's sturdy mast, a horrifying column of muscle and sinew, mottled in shades of abyssal black and a sickly, pulsating bioluminescence that mirrors the grotesque light of the blood moon. It rises impossibly high, water streaming from it in torrents, before crashing back down into the sea with a sound like a thunderclap, sending a geyser of icy water and splintered debris high into the air. Then another appears, and another, until the sea around your doomed vessel is a writhing forest of these monstrous, questing limbs. The previous, almost geological horror of the swimming mountain is dwarfed, a mere prelude to this. This is the Kraken. There is no doubt now, no room for misinterpretation. The legends, the fireside tales, Stigger's terrified prophecies, they are all horrifically, undeniably real. This is the creature whose name is whispered in fear by the oldest mariners, the terror of the deep, the bane of ships and sailors. Its sheer scale is an affront to reason, an obscenity against the natural order. The island you saw earlier, perhaps it was merely the crown of its vast head, or another lesser beast that travels in its shadow. This is the primeval horror itself. All attempts at rationalization, at finding some mundane explanation, vanish like sea foam on the wind. This is not a whale, not a squid of unusual size. This is a god or a demon from a pre-human epoch, an entity of unimaginable power and antiquity. The terror that grips you is absolute, a primal, paralyzing dread that strips away every layer of your Viking courage, your warrior's pride, leaving only the stark animalistic fear of imminent, overwhelming annihilation. You see your shipmates, men who have faced storms and Saxon hordes without flinching, now reduced to wide-eyed, screaming wrecks. Some freeze where they stand, their faces slack with disbelief. Others fall to their knees, babbling incoherent prayers to Odin, to Thor, to any god that might offer even the faintest sliver of hope in this maelstrom of despair. Young Olaf, who first spotted the rising terror, simply points and screams a continuous high-pitched keen that is almost lost in the cacophony of the monster's movements. Jarl Bjorn, his face ashen, his great beard plastered to his chest by the spray, still grips the steering oar, though it is useless now. He roars something, perhaps a curse, perhaps a defiance, but his voice is a gnat's buzz against the thunder of the Kraken's arrival. The ship is tossed about like a child's toy, the timbers groaning and cracking under the strain of the violent water and the proximity of such colossal power. The tentacles, a dozen or more now visible, move with a horrifying combination of speed and deliberate purpose. They are not just flailing. They are exploring, questing their tips, some as broad as your longship's beam, others tapering to whip-like points, brushing against the hull, against the rigging. You can see the massive suckers that line their undersides, some of them larger than shields pulsing rhythmically. The bioluminescent patterns on their skin shift and ripple, casting eerie, dancing lights across the chaos, a grotesque parody of starlight. The smell is overpowering now, that ancient, rotten brine mixed with an alien musk, so potent it burns your nostrils and makes your eyes water. And the sounds, the roar of displaced water, the sucking, tearing noises as the tentacles move, the deep, guttural groans that seem to emanate from the creature's unseen core. And now, a new sound, a horrifying rhythmic clicking, like colossal castanets, perhaps some form of communication, or the snapping of its beak far below. One of the colossal tentacles, its surface slick and cold-looking, sweeps directly towards the sea serpent. It moves with an unnatural speed for something so vast. There is no time to react, no place to run. You can only watch, your heart hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird, as this arm of oblivion descends upon your fragile vessel, intent on crushing you all into the unforgiving, blood-stained sea. The shadow of the Kraken has fallen, and with it, the shadow of an unspeakable, inevitable doom. The colossal tentacle, a pillar of nightmarish flesh and alien power, descends not directly upon the sea serpent, but slams into the water beside it with the force of a falling mountain. A geyser of black, icy water erupts skyward, drenching you and your shipmates, the impact sending a shockwave that throws men from their feet. The longship is violently tossed, heeling over so far that its mast almost touches the churning sea, the shields mounted on its port side ripped away like bark from a tree. Oars, spare spares, provision barrels, and screaming men are flung into the air, swallowed by the blood-moon-tinged chaos. You cling desperately to a rigging line, the hemp biting into your palms, your body slammed against the gunwale. The world is a dizzying, deafening maelstrom of roaring water, splintering wood, and the high-pitched, terrified screams of your comrades. This is no longer a battle, not even a struggle. It is the mindless, overwhelming fury of a primordial god unleashed upon insignificant mortals. Your Viking weaponry, the trusty axe at your belt, the spear you might have wielded in a shield wall, the sayax sheathed at your side, are utterly, laughably useless against such a foe. To strike at one of these tentacles would be like a gnat attacking a giant. The longship itself, a masterpiece of Viking craftsmanship designed to brave storms and carry warriors to victory, is now nothing more than a fragile toy in the grip of an impossible behemoth. Before the sea serpent can even begin to right itself from that first cataclysmic near miss, another tentacle, its surface glistening with oily blackness and those disturbing, pulsing patches of bioluminescence, crashes down directly onto the stern. There is a sound like the world's largest bones snapping as the heavy timbers of the aft castle, where Jarl Bjorn stood defiantly at the steering oar, shatter into 1,000 pieces. The beautifully carved dragon-tail sternpost is obliterated. You see for a horrifying instant Jarl Bjorn himself, his great axe still in hand, disappear amidst the wreckage and the black thrashing limb, his final battle roar swallowed by the abyss. A wave of despair, colder and more profound than the icy seawater, washes over you. With the captain gone, with the ship mortally wounded, what hope remains? Yet the instinct for survival, deeply ingrained, still flickers. You scramble, along with a few other dazed survivors, towards the relatively intact midsection of the ship, though intact is a generous term for the groaning, splintering wreck that is rapidly taking on water. Then, from the roiling sea beside the wounded vessel, an eye surfaces, an eye that defies all earthly comparison. It is vast, larger than the biggest shield on your ship, a colossal, lidless orb, of an impossible milky yellow, with a slit pupil blacker than the deepest night. It fixes upon the struggling sea serpent and its terrified crew with an ancient, chilling, and undeniably intelligent gaze. This is not the mindless rage of a beast. This is the cold, appraising scrutiny of a hunter, a demigod of the abyss examining its prey. The sight of that eye, ancient beyond reckoning, wise with the unspeakable secrets of the lightless depths, is perhaps more terrifying than the physical destruction. It strips away the illusion that this is merely a monstrous animal. This is something other, something that perceives and perhaps even thinks in ways you cannot comprehend. You feel a paralysis creep over you, a soul-deep terror that roots you to the spot. You want to look away, but you cannot. That colossal eye holds you captive, a tiny insignificant speck reflected in its horrifying alien surface. Around you, men are screaming, praying, or simply staring, their minds shattered by the sheer, unadulterated horror of it all. Leif, your rowing companion, babbles a prayer, his face a mask of white terror. Gunnar, who had seemed frozen, suddenly lets out a wild, despairing yell and hurls his axe at the eye. The weapon, a formidable piece of Viking steel, bounces harmlessly off the creature's tough, gelatinous eyelid, if such it can be called, and splashes uselessly into the sea. The eye does not even blink. It simply observes. The sensory onslaught is overwhelming. The constant roar of the water and the creature's movements. The high-pitched screams and choked cries of your dying shipmates. The sickening, grinding crunch of timbers as the ship is further assaulted. The icy shock of seawater that constantly washes over the deck, chilling you to the bone. The ever-present rank stench of the Kraken, a perfume of ancient decay and alien biology. And above all, the horrifying, unwavering gaze of that colossal eye, burning itself into your memory. A vision that will haunt your nightmares, should you be cursed enough to survive this night. The first strike was devastating. What follows promises to be annihilation. The Kraken, its horrifying eye still fixed upon your doomed vessel, begins its final assault. There is no more testing, no more idle destruction. Now it is the focused, relentless effort of a predator securing its meal. Multiple tentacles like the muscular arms of some abyssal god snake around the hull of the sea serpent, their immense strength undeniable. The stout oak planks, which have withstood the fury of North Sea gales, groan and shriek in protest as they begin to buckle and splinter under the crushing pressure. The ship is literally being squeezed to death. You and the few remaining survivors are trapped on a rapidly disintegrating platform. The deck tilts at an impossible angle as the Kraken begins to drag the entire vessel downwards. Men slide across the slick, canted planks, screaming as they are pitched into the churning, blood-moonlit water, where other tentacles seem to be waiting to pluck them from the surface like ripe fruit. You see a shipmate, young Eric, who boasted of his swimming prowess, desperately try to escape the sinking wreck, only to be snatched by a whip-like tentacle, his cry cut short as he is pulled beneath the waves. Drowning is a profound fear for any Viking. For all your mastery of the sea and your longships, the water itself is an alien, hostile element. To die in battle, axe in hand, was an honorable death, a path to Valhalla. But to drown, to be dragged into the cold, lightless depths by a monster, or to die a straw death of sickness or old age, these were ignoble ends. The terror of the icy water, of the crushing darkness below, is as potent as the fear of the monster itself. The sea serpent is now more submerged than afloat, its proud dragon prow dipping beneath the waves, water pouring over its gunnels in torrents. The creature is not just sinking your ship, it is actively pulling it and you towards something. Through the chaos, through the spray and the writhing limbs, you catch a glimpse of what lies beneath the colossal head, beneath the ring of tentacles, the Kraken's mouth. It is not a mouth of teeth and flesh as you know it, but a horrifying parrot-like beak, colossal in size, black as obsidian, opening and closing with a slow, rhythmic, and utterly inexorable motion. It is a gateway to oblivion, a chasm of final, absolute darkness. The sheer abject desperation of these moments is indescribable. Your world has narrowed to this single horrifying reality, the crushing grip of the monster, the icy water rising around you, the screams of your dying comrades, and the inexorable pull towards that monstrous beak. You are fighting for every breath, your lungs burning, your muscles screaming in protest as you try to cling to a piece of wreckage, to anything that offers a moment's purchase. But the tentacles are everywhere. Their cold, slick, immensely powerful coils wrapping around spars, around men, around you. One of the smaller, though still terrifyingly large, tentacles snakes around your waist, its grip like iron bands, squeezing the air from your lungs. You are lifted from the deck, dangling helplessly, your feet kicking uselessly in the air. You beat at it with your fists, your sayacs long lost, but your blows are meaningless. You are brought face to face, or as close as matters, with a section of its rubbery cold flesh, the alien patterns of its skin, the pulsing bioluminescent patches that seem to mock the sacred light of the stars, now hidden by the blood moon's overwhelming glare. The stench is unbearable, a combination of the deepest, oldest ocean trenches and something akin to rotting flesh on a gargantuan scale. You are being dragged underwater towards that grinding, clicking beak. The cold water closes over your head, the sounds of the chaos above muted to a dull roar. Panic claws at your throat. Your lungs are bursting. The pressure of the deep, even this relatively shallow immersion, is immense. Darkness envelops you, broken only by the ghostly, shifting light of the Kraken's own luminescence, and the hellish red glow filtering down from the blood moon above. Is this how your saga ends? Not with a song of heroism sung by skalds, but as a forgotten morsel for an ancient, nameless horror from a time before gods and men. The last vestiges of your Viking spirit, your will to fight, flicker and dim in the face of such overwhelming, indifferent, and absolute power. You are a speck of dust in the maw of eternity. Dragged down into the crushing, icy darkness, the last of your air burning in your lungs, you feel an almost serene resignation begin to settle over the terror. This is the end, the embrace of Ran's cold domain. But even as your vision dims, the Viking spirit, that stubborn, often reckless courage that has propelled your people across storm-tossed seas and onto hostile shores, flares one last time, not just in you, but in another. Through the murky, blood moon-filtered water, you glimpse a scene of almost mythic, albeit futile, defiance. It is Stiga, the old skald. Somehow he has freed an arm, and in his hand he grips not a weapon but a burning brand, a piece of wreckage somehow still smouldering, or perhaps a pitch-soaked torch he had prepared for some ritual, now miraculously alight even in this chaos. With a final guttural roar that expels his last breath in a torrent of bubbles, he thrusts the flaming brand into the nearest colossal eye of the Kraken, the same eye that had held you all transfixed in its ancient gaze. It is an act of magnificent, insane bravery, a pinprick against a god. Yet for a creature of the abyssal depths, unused to fire and sudden, searing pain in such a sensitive organ, the effect is instantaneous and violent. The Kraken convulses, a titanic shudder that shakes the very water around you. An unearthly screech, a sound that is both a roar and a hiss tears through the ocean, so powerful it feels as if your bones will shatter. The tentacle gripping you and countless others spasms and recoils. In that moment of agonizing, monstrous pain and surprise, its grip on you loosens. You're not released gently. You are flung, spat out by the convulsion, a piece of unwanted refuse. You tumble through the churning water disoriented, your lungs screaming for air. The desperate gamble of the old skald, a final offering on the altar of defiance, has brought you, and perhaps a few others, a single precious heartbeat of opportunity. You claw your way upwards, driven by a primal instinct older than thought. Your head breaks the surface, and you take a ragged, gasping breath of the cold night air. A breath that tastes sweeter than any mead. Around you is a scene of utter devastation. The sea serpent is gone, dragged beneath the waves. It's sturdy. Timbers no match for the Kraken's wrath. The sea is a maelstrom of wreckage, floating oars, shattered chests, and the bodies of your shipmates. Pale and lifeless in the ghastly crimson light of the blood moon, the Kraken is still there, its immense bulk thrashing, its tentacles coiling and uncoiling in agony or rage. The wounded eye is a ruin, spewing forth a torrent of black viscous fluid that further taints the water. For now, its attention is turned inward to its own colossal pain, its hunt momentarily forgotten. Steiger is nowhere to be seen, his sacrifice absolute. He has brought you a chance, a sliver of hope in an ocean of despair. You spot a large section of the shattered hull, perhaps part of the raised foredeck, miraculously still afloat. With desperate, failing strength, you swim towards it, your limbs numb with cold and exertion. Other dark shapes are moving in the water, a few other survivors, equally desperate, equally terrified. You haul yourself onto the precarious refuge, your body shaking uncontrollably, and collapse, coughing up seawater, every muscle screaming in protest. The gamble worked for an instant, but the night is far from over and the monster is still here. Your precarious sanctuary is a section of the sea serpent's hull, perhaps 20 feet long, its timbers splintered and groaning, but for now, it floats. You are not alone. 4 other figures have dragged themselves aboard, their faces pale and drawn in the blood moon's unholy light, their eyes wide with the lingering shock of what they have just endured. There is Leif, your rowing companion, shivering violently, his arm bent at an unnatural angle. Gunnar, the usually boisterous warrior, is unnervingly silent, staring out at the dark water with an empty gaze. Young Finn, the boy who wept, is here too, huddled and whimpering. And surprisingly, Kalf, the skull splitter, the berserker, though, his famed fury is extinguished, replaced by a grim, watchful intensity. 5 of you from a crew of 40, 5 souls adrift in an ocean that has become a realm of nightmares. The cold is a relentless enemy, soaked to the bone, exposed to the biting wind that has begun to pick up now that the unnatural calm has been broken by the Kraken's fury. Your body trembles uncontrollably. Hypothermia, a word unknown to you, is a creeping threat, dulling your senses, sapping your remaining strength. In your modern understanding, survival in such conditions for any length of time would be a miracle, requiring immediate rescue and medical attention. Here you have only the tattered remnants of your woolen clothes and the fading warmth of your own failing bodies. The blood moon still reigns supreme in the starless sky, its crimson light painting the scene in hues of slaughter and madness. The Kraken is still a terrifying presence, though its initial frenzied thrashing has subsided. Its immense shadowy bulk is visible not far off, a dark stain upon the dark water, occasionally shifting, its uninjured eye, you imagine, still scanning the surface. The rank alien stench of it still hangs heavy in the air, a constant reminder of its proximity. And from the depths around your makeshift raft, strange sounds continue to emanate. Deep, guttural clicks, sonorous vibrations that you feel more than hear, as if the creature is communicating with unseen things, or perhaps merely digesting its terrible meal. The psychological toll is as devastating as the physical. The loss of your ship, your Jarl, your comrades, it is a wound that cuts deeper than any blade. These were men you had lived with, fought alongside, shared dreams and hardships with. To see them so brutally, so casually annihilated by a force beyond comprehension is a trauma that will forever scar your soul. Gunnar's silence is perhaps the most eloquent testament to this inner devastation. His spirit, it seems, has drowned, along with his shipmates. You try to speak, to offer some word of encouragement, but your throat is raw, your teeth chattering too violently. Leif groans in pain, cradling his broken arm. Finn's whimpers are the only constant sound from your small, wretched group. Calf scans the water, his hand still instinctively resting on the hilt of his seax. Though what good it would be now is a question no one dares to voice. The vastness of the North Sea, once a challenging but navigable expanse, now feels infinite, hostile, and utterly alien. Every shadow on the water, every ripple, every distant splash sends a fresh jolt of terror through you. Is it the Kraken returning to finish its work? Is it another, lesser horror, drawn by the scent of blood and death? Or is it merely the play of the crimson moonlight on the waves, your fear-addled mind conjuring new threats from the ordinary? You recall the offerings made before the voyage, the prayers to Ran and Aegir. Clearly, they were insufficient. Or perhaps this creature, this Kraken, answers to no gods you know, is an entity outside the Norse cosmology, a forgotten power from an older, darker age. The blood moon, Steiger had said, was an omen of such things. The old Skald had seen the truth and paid for it with his life. Hours crawl by, an eternity of cold fear and aching grief. The taste of salt and despair is a constant in your mouth. You see bodies, pale and bloated, drifting amongst the wreckage, mute testimony to the night's horror. Some are your friends. You look away, a fresh wave of nausea and sorrow washing over you. Survival at this moment feels less like a blessing and more like a prolonged torment, a front row seat to a personal hell. And the hunt, you instinctively know, is not yet over. As the night wears on, a new and more insidious phase of terror begins. The Kraken, having recovered somewhat from Steiger's desperate attack, or perhaps having simply decided to savor its victory, begins to hunt the remaining survivors with a horrifying, deliberate silence. There are no more convulsive thrashings, no more enraged roars, just a methodical, patient, and utterly chilling search amidst the debris field that was once your proud longship. You and your 4 companions on the precarious raft of wreckage are acutely aware of this shift. The Vikings were hunters themselves, skilled trackers on land. You recognize the chilling signs of a predator that knows its prey is wounded, trapped, and has nowhere to run. The colossal shadow beneath the waves moves with a new stealth, its immense bulk displacing water with an almost imperceptible ripple. The bioluminescent patches on its unseen skin pulse with a slower, more rhythmic glow, like the patient breathing of a lurking beast. The blood moon, still hanging like a malevolent eye in the sky, provides just enough ghastly light to witness the unfolding horror. You see a piece of wreckage not far from your own, with 2 men clinging to it, their faces pale blurs in the crimson gloom. Suddenly, a single, utterly silent tentacle, blacker than the surrounding water, snakes up from the depths beside them. There is no splash, no warning. It moves with the fluid grace of a serpent. One moment the men are there, the next, the tentacle has enveloped one of them, and with a sickening, soft tearing sound, he is dragged beneath the surface without so much as a gurgle. The other man screams, a thin, desperate sound that is quickly choked off as a second tentacle rises to claim him. Then silence. Only the gently rocking wreckage remains. The 5 of you watch this silent, efficient slaughter in mute terror. There is nothing you can do. To shout a warning would be to reveal your own position. To attempt a rescue would be suicide. You are utterly helpless, reduced to horrified spectators of your own impending doom. Young Finn stifles a sob, burying his face in his hands. Leif, despite his broken arm, tries to make himself smaller, as if to disappear into the splintered wood. Gunnar remains a statue of despair. Only Kalf, the skull splitter, continues to scan the water, his expression unreadable, perhaps weighing the infinitesimal chances of some desperate final act. The psychological torture of this silent hunt is almost unbearable. Every creak of your makeshift raft, every splash of water against its sides, sounds like a dinner bell to the monster lurking below. You try to control your breathing, to remain as still as possible, convinced that the slightest movement, the faintest sound, will draw its attention. The silence between these terrifying, snatching episodes is a torment in itself, filled with a dreadful anticipation. Your modern mind might try to calculate probabilities, to hope that the sheer vastness of the debris field might offer some chance of being overlooked. But your Viking heart knows that fate word is often cruel and inescapable, and tonight, fate has the form of a many-armed horror from the abyss. Another piece of wreckage, further out. A lone survivor, clinging to a dragon prow carved figurehead that bobs grotesquely in the water. You watch, unable to look away, as a shadow detaches itself from the greater darkness beneath the waves. A tentacle, vast and inexorable, rises. The man sees it at the last moment. He doesn't scream. He simply raises a defiant fist towards the blood moon before he is enveloped and dragged under. The dragon head bobbing once, twice, then pulled down after him. The kraken is being methodical, cleaning the slate. It is not a frenzied feeding, but a calculated reaping. The terror is no longer just of overwhelming power, but of a cold alien intelligence at work. A patient hunter ensuring no witness, no survivor, escapes its domain. The smell of fear from your own small group is a palpable thing, mingling with the ever-present stench of the creature. You can almost taste your own adrenaline, your own despair. Your senses are heightened to an almost painful degree. Every ripple, every shadow, every submerged piece of debris that bumps against your raft sends a jolt of fresh terror through you. The silent hunt continues, and the blood moon watches, its gaze as cold and pitiless as the monster it illuminates. The silence stretches, taut and unbearable. For a long while, nothing happens. Perhaps you allow a treacherous sliver of hope to flicker. Perhaps the kraken is satisfied, or has moved on. Perhaps you have been overlooked. But the hope is a fragile thing easily shattered. And shatter it does with a horrifying, stealthy finality. A colossal dark shape materializes directly beneath your makeshift raft. It doesn't rise, it simply out is there. A vast blackness that blots out the faint luminescence from the deeper water. Then, with an almost delicate, terrifying slowness, a single monstrous tentacle, thicker around than your own body, begins to rise from the water right beside you, not feet away but inches. It is so close you can see the intricate alien texture of its skin, like ancient waterlogged leather, cold and rubbery. You can see the individual muscle fibers rippling beneath the surface as it moves. The massive suckers, some small, some as large as dinner plates, seem to pulse with a life of their own. There is no escape, no time to react. You are discovered. The tentacle does not immediately strike. It looms over you, a sentient pillar of black flesh, its tip swaying gently as if examining you, assessing you. You can feel the cold radiating from it, smell its rank ancient odor, now so concentrated it makes you gag. Your companions are frozen in attitudes of pure abject terror. Finn is a whimpering ball. Leif has his eyes squeezed shut, muttering a continuous incoherent prayer. Gunnar stares, his face a mask of utter desolation. Even Kalf the Skull Splitter seems to have accepted the inevitable, his hand loose on his seax, his shoulders slumped. Then, as if summoned by the questing tentacle, one of the kraken's colossal eyes, the uninjured one, breaks the surface nearby, rising like a malevolent moon from the deep. It is impossibly vast, that milky yellow orb with its Stygian slit pupil, and it fixes directly on you. Not on the group, but on you. In that moment, the universe narrows to this single horrifying connection. You are eye to eye with the abyss, and the abyss is staring back with a cold, ancient, and unfathomable intelligence. What goes through your mind in such a moment? Does your life flash before your eyes, as the old tales say? Or is there only room for a terror so profound it transcends all other thought, all other emotion? The Viking concept of wired, of inescapable fate, might offer a strange, grim comfort to some, an acceptance of the inevitable. But for you in this instant, there is perhaps only the raw, primal scream of a consciousness about to be extinguished by something so far beyond its comprehension as to be almost divine in its awfulness. Do you fight? Do you lunge with your bare hands at the tentacle, a final futile act of defiance? Do you scream or pray or weep? Or do you simply stare back into that abyssal eye, meeting its gaze with whatever shred of human dignity, of Viking pride you have left? Perhaps in this ultimate moment, a strange calm descends, the calm of absolute certainty, the calm of the void. The blood moon's crimson light reflects in that monstrous eye, and in your own a shared, unholy communion of predator and prey. The tentacle begins to descend, slowly, deliberately. You can feel the displacement of air, the subtle shift in pressure. The suckers on its underside are clearly visible, alien mouths ready to fasten onto your flesh. The immense pressure of its proximity is a physical weight, crushing the breath from your lungs even before it touches you. This is it. The silent hunt has found its quarry. There will be no more Stigers to offer a desperate gamble. There will be no more chances. The cold, leathery surface of the tentacle is about to make contact, to envelop you, to drag you down into the lightless, clicking maw of the Kraken. Your saga, it seems, is truly at its end. The sound of the tentacle moving very close, the suckers, perhaps making soft, wet noises. Then a sudden, violent and completely unexpected sound, a deep tectonic groan from the earth itself, or a colossal, distant explosion, case implosion from underwater, far larger than the Kraken. Just as the cold, monstrous flesh of the Kraken's tentacle is about to brush your skin, just as you brace for the crushing embrace that will drag you to a horrifying death, an event occurs that is so unexpected, so cosmically strange, that it dwarfs even the terror of the Kraken. The sea itself seems to cry out. A deep, resonant groan, far more powerful than any sound the Kraken has made, shudders up from the abyssal depths, a sound that feels less like a noise and more like a vibration of the planet's very bones. The water around your raft begins to boil and churn, not from the Kraken's movements, but from some immense unseen disturbance far below. The blood moon, which has hung malevolently in the sky all night, pulses with a sudden violent intensity, its crimson light flaring to an almost unbearable brilliance, before dimming erratically. The Kraken itself reacts with what can only be described as fear. Its colossal body, which had seemed the epitome of unstoppable power, convulses. The tentacle poised above you retracts with a speed that is astonishing for its size. The great eye, which had been fixed on you with such cold, predatory focus, now swivels wildly, looking downwards into the turbulent depths, its ancient intelligence clearly alarmed. What is happening? In your Viking understanding, this could be Ragnarok itself, the twilight of the gods, the world serpent Jörmungandr thrashing in its death throes, or the Fenris wolf breaking its chains. From a modern perspective, it might be a massive underwater volcanic eruption, a submarine earthquake of catastrophic proportions, or some other equally devastating natural phenomenon. But the sheer focused intensity of it, coinciding with the blood moon's strange behavior, suggests something more. Steiger's prophecies spoke of ancient evils, of slumbering dreads. Perhaps the Kraken, terrible as it is not the apex predator of this benighted ocean. Perhaps it has disturbed something even older, even vaster, something that has slept for eons in the lightless trenches where even Krakens fear to tread. The sea around the Kraken begins to glow with an eerie blue-green light from below, a light that is not the creature's own bioluminescence. Steam erupts from the surface in massive plumes, hissing and roaring, The water level around your raft drops suddenly, then surges back with terrifying force, tossing your fragile sanctuary about like a leaf. The kraken lets out a sound that is unmistakably a shriek of pain and terror, a sound that makes its previous roars seem like whispers. Its tentacles flail, no longer hunting, but desperately trying to propel its immense bulk away from the epicenter of this new disturbance. You witness, in stunned, terrified disbelief, the unthinkable. The kraken, the monster that destroyed your ship and slaughtered your crew, is itself fleeing. Or perhaps it is being attacked. You see one of its mighty tentacles violently pulled beneath the surface, with a sound like tearing canvas on a colossal scale, followed by a gout of black, oily ichor that spreads across the boiling water. Another tentacle is severed, thrashing, uselessly for a moment before sinking. The mighty hunter has become the hunted. You and your few companions are forgotten, insignificant specks in this battle of titans, or this cataclysm of nature. The tentacle that was about to claim you is gone, a distant memory in the face of this new, incomprehensible horror. You are released, not by mercy, but by the sheer indifference of a greater, unfolding terror. The water around you is hot now, the air thick with sulfurous fumes and the deafening roar of this new cataclysm. The blood moon flickers like a dying ember. The kraken, or what's left of it, makes a final, desperate surge and disappears into the turbulent, glowing, steaming water, heading away from the source of the upheaval. Its movements no longer proud and predatory, but panicked and wounded. You are left alive, not saved, but simply left behind on a piece of wreckage in an ocean that has transformed from a hunting ground into the heart of a cosmic war or a geological hell. The immediate threat of the kraken is gone, but the world itself feels like it is coming apart at the seams. The turning of the tide has brought not relief, but a new, vaster, and even more terrifying understanding of your own insignificance in the face of the true horrors the universe can unleash. How long the undersea cataclysm rages, you cannot say. Time has lost all meaning. You cling to the wreckage, tossed about by waves that are not born of wind, but of the Earth's agony, amidst steam that scalds your skin and fumes that choke your lungs. The blood moon finally fades, defeated by the approaching dawn, its malevolent crimson giving way to a bruised, sickly grey light that reveals a scene of utter desolation. The sea where the upheaval occurred is a churning, discolored mess, littered with strange, unidentifiable debris and the corpses of deep-sea creatures unknown to you, thrown to the surface by the violence. The immediate, terrifying power of the event seems to have subsided, leaving behind a wounded, groaning ocean. Of the kraken there is no sign. Whether it escaped or was consumed by whatever horror it awakened, you will never know. You are, almost unbelievably, still alive. So are your four companions, though in what state is debatable. Leif is unconscious, his broken arm swollen grotesquely. Young Finn is curled into a tight ball, shaking and muttering incoherently, his mind clearly shattered. Gunnar stares out at the scarred sea with eyes that have seen too much, the vibrant spark of his warrior spirit extinguished, leaving only a hollow shell. Kalf the Skull Splitter, ever the pragmatist, is trying to rig a piece of tattered sailcloth to a broken spar, perhaps in a desperate, instinctive attempt to create some form of rudimentary sail or shelter, though his movements are slow, exhausted. The Beetham rising sun, a pale, watery disk in the eastern sky, brings no warmth, no comfort, only illumination for the full extent of your misery. The vast empty expanse of the North Sea stretches in all directions, a cold, indifferent witness to your suffering. The wreckage you cling to is small, battered, and offers little protection. You have no food, no fresh water, no means of navigation. Beyond the sun, should it deign to show itself clearly. The cold is a gnawing ache in your bones, your clothes still damp, your skin raw from salt and steam. The memory of the Kraken, its colossal tentacles, its ancient knowing eye, is burned into your mind, a brand of terror that will never fade. But now that horror is overlaid with the even more incomprehensible terror of the deep upheaval, the glimpse of forces that could make even a Kraken flee in panic. Your Viking worldview, which already accommodated gods, giants, and monsters, has been stretched to its breaking point and then shattered. The world is not as you knew it. It is older, darker, and filled with secrets far more terrifying than any Scald's tale ever dared to imagine. Survival feels like a cruel jest. You have outlasted the monster, outlasted the cataclysm, but for what? To die slowly of thirst or hunger or exposure, haunted by the faces of your dead shipmates and the things you have witnessed. The psychological trauma is a wound deeper and more lasting than any physical injury. How can you return to the world of men, to the mundane concerns of farming and fishing, after having stared into the very eyes of the abyss, after having felt the foundations of the world tremble with primordial rage? As the grey light of dawn strengthens, Calf points a trembling finger towards the horizon. A dark shape. Indistinct. Is it land? A smudge of coastline, a distant island, the answer to your desperate, unspoken prayers? Or is it another ship? A potential rescue? Or perhaps new enemies in this unforgiving age? Or your fear-ravaged mind whispers, is it merely another illusion in this new, terrifyingly expanded world? Another trick of the light? Another prelude to a different kind of horror? Your immediate survival from the Kraken and the subsequent upheaval is a stark fact. But what kind of survival is it? You are scarred, body and soul. Your connection to the world you knew is severed. The sea, which was once a path to adventure and riches, is now a graveyard, a hunting ground, a place of unimaginable terrors. The dawn brings no true hope, only a clearer view of your desolation and the terrifying, unending expanse of a changed and hostile sea. Your voyage into darkness has ended, but the darkness you suspect will now reside within you forever. And so you drifted from that benighted voyage, Thorolf, a survivor cast back from a realm of horrors that defy human language. You witnessed the sea itself hold its breath under a malevolent blood moon, felt the primal dread as ancient forebodings took monstrous shape. From the ambiguous terror of the swimming mountain to the full sanity-shattering onslaught of the Kraken, you endured the annihilation of your ship, the slaughter of your comrades, and the terrifying intimacy of being hunted by a creature of nightmare. And then even that colossal horror was dwarfed, forced to flee or fall before an even greater unnamed cataclysm that boiled up from the deepest abyss, a force that tore the very fabric of the ocean. Your survival was not a victory, but a desolate abandonment on a scarred and alien sea. We ask again then, with the salt of that spectral ocean still stinging your senses, could you have truly survived? Perhaps your body endured, clinging to shattered timbers until a grim dawn. But could your mind, your Viking spirit, steeped in a world of powerful but ultimately comprehensible gods and tangible monsters, withstand the confrontation with terrors so vast, so ancient, so utterly indifferent to human concerns? Could you survive the shattering of your worldview, the horrifying revelation that the sagas and myths, terrifying as they were, had only scratched the surface of what truly lurked in the abyssal dark, horrors that could make even a Kraken seem small? Such an experience would carve a chasm in the soul of any human, from any age. For a Viking sailor like you, Thorolf, it would mean the utter devastation of your known reality. The gods of Asgard, the giants of Jotunheim, even the monstrous Kraken itself, all would be relegated to a lesser tier of existence in the face of such cosmic indifferent power. The fear would be more than just the memory of tentacles and beaks. It would be the crushing weight of insignificance, the terrifying knowledge of a universe far older, stranger, and more hostile than any runestone ever foretold. Your connection to your kin, your jarl, your very gods, would feel tenuous, almost meaningless against the backdrop of that abyssal terror. You step back now, from the cold grey light of that scarred dawn, from the endless groaning sea, and return to the perceived certainties of your own time. The drone of modern life may offer a superficial comfort, but perhaps the next time you see a full moon, particularly one tinged with an unnatural hue, you will remember the blood moon of the North Sea. Perhaps the vast, dark expanse of the ocean, viewed from a beach or a modern vessel, will forever whisper to you of colossal, unseen things moving in the sunless depths. The Kraken may be a legend, a product of ancient mariners' fears, but the primal human dread of the vast, unexplored unknown, the chilling possibility of entities and forces that operate on scales and principles beyond our comprehension, that fear is as old as consciousness itself. What truly sleeps in the abyssal trenches of our oceans, or in the cold, dark voids between the stars? The echoes of that night, Thorolf, and the shadow of what you almost touched, will linger long after the salt has dried and the wounds have scarred. The greatest horrors are not always those we can name, but those whose existence shatters our understanding of everything. Our thank you for weathering this grim passage with us at Grim Histories for Sleep. May the terrors of the deep remain confined to the realm of story, and your own nights be marked by tranquility. If these shadowed voyages provide a unique solace, do consider liking this video and subscribing for more tales from the edge of history and nightmare. Until next time, sleep soundly if you can.